Hey guys, welcome to ranking the shows I watched in 2023 on a tier list. This is the third year in a row I'm doing this. I love just sitting down and talking about the shows I watched because there's a lot that I don't react to and I want to talk about it, but I don't really get the chance to besides doing these videos. But in 2023, I feel like I didn't watch as many shows as I normally do because I watched a ton more movies. So get ready to just hang out, watch me ramble on about shows, and then rank them on a tier list. Before I get into the ranking though, two things. One, I have commitment issues when it comes to shows. I will start a show and be super into it, but then a few days later, I just quit and go to another show. And maybe I go back to it, maybe I don't. I don't know why I do that though. So there are gonna be some shows that I rank that I have not finished the show. I kind of like just quit halfway through, but I do need to go back to. That's one of my goals for 2024, stop giving up on shows, just commit to it. And the second thing I wanna say is, this is my opinion, so if you have a different opinion, that's fine, just don't hate me for mine. All right, now for the tiers. At the top, we have my comfort show. I feel like there are gonna be many here. Next, we have I love. I love the show, but I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorites when it comes to like my go-to comfort show. Next, we have might rewatch. So I like it, probably rewatch, but do I love it? Under that, we have and then in the bottom tier, not a fan. Normally there would be a tier below that, but there aren't any shows that I like hated that I watched this year. I'm gonna make chapters for each show I talk about because there will be spoilers, so if you want to skip around, that's cool. That's why I'm making the chapters. I'm gonna be pretty concise about most of the things I talk about, but while I was jotting down notes about each show to like kind of get my thoughts organized, I accidentally ended up writing like a whole essay for one of the shows. You could probably guess which one that is because that chapter will be the longest. This is for one show, a couple sentences, right? And then this is for one show. I kind of went insane. It's fine. All right, now I'm gonna begin with the first show I watched this year, Treason. It's the spy thriller starring Charlie Cox. I watched the first episode at the end of 22 and continued the series. I gotta say, I don't really remember much from it besides the fact that I think in episode 4, Charlie's character got killed off and I was like, oh, when's he coming back? Because I'm so used to like superhero shows and like, oh, you're not really dead, but he was. I like a good spy show, but it didn't feel like it was anything super special, so I'm gonna put it in Alright, next is Kaleidoscope. That's the 8-episode series on Netflix where you can watch the episodes in any order, and I watched it in chronological order because I'm boring like that. But I was super into it, I was super intrigued. How is everything going to piece together to the final heist? I loved how each episode like had their own color and everything just went nicely. RJ deserved better. I'm gonna put it in might rewatch because it was very interesting. Next we have Once Upon a Time. I've been wanting to watch that show for a very long time. So early in the year I started it. I watched like the first 7 episodes in 2 days. Few days later started episode 8, never finished it, never went back to the show. I couldn't tell you why. Like I was intrigued. I have been excited to watch it for a while. So I will definitely be going back to it. So I'm gonna put Once Upon a Time in might rewatch. I'm going like pretty quick with these first few, but when I get to the last one, it is probably gonna be like 20 minutes at least. But I'm so excited to talk about it and just ramble on. Next we have The Bear. It is so good, so anxiety inducing. It's such a good show. I watched season 1 earlier this year, and then I didn't watch season 2 like until a couple months after it came out, but it's so good. It's like it grabs your attention, you're like into it. I don't know, just everything about it is good. The characters, the pacing, it feels realistic. Something that they do is they have like real background noises, so it doesn't feel fake, like the conversations don't feel fake, and that's just something really neat about the show. And season 2 episode 6, Fishes, that episode I started the episode and was like halfway through when I realized that it was an hour long. Because normally the episodes are 30 minutes, but I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm sitting here for an hour then. I'm putting The Bear in I love. It's not comforting at all. There's too much yelling for it to be comforting, but it is so good. I'm so excited for season 3. Next up is The Last of Us. So prior to the TV show, I had no idea that it was a video game. Really, the only video games I played growing up were Pokemon, Super Mario Bros, Mario Kart, Nintendogs. But I found it very fascinating. I don't think I started watching it till like... No, I think I started watching it when the first 2 episodes were out because I remember watching the Bill and Frank episode like when that came out, which was just heartbreaking. There were a lot of heartbreaking moments. Episode 3, Sarah's death in episode 1, the season 1 finale, and I'm excited to see season 2. I loved the world building they did, and even though I didn't really have any background on the game, I was still able to follow along with it, and I'd see videos of people who did play the games and who do love the games like talking about it and enjoying it, which was nice to see. I'm gonna put it in I love because I was excited. I was there every week. Oh, another heartbreaking moment was episode 7 when Riley got bit and, you know, Ellie had to mourn her loss. Also, when Ellie's mom got bit and died, oh, and that was like the original Ellie from the games. That was cool and something I did not know until after I watched the episode. Next up is The Witcher. I actually started this the same day that I started The Last of Us, so I was sort of like watching them together. I think I watched the first episode of The Last of Us and the first episode of The Witcher and then back and forth, but I started that earlier this year, watched season 2. I've not seen season 3, and I'm not really in a hurry to because it is Henry Cavill's last season, so I'm good with taking my time on that. I think it's very fascinating, but honestly, I couldn't tell you what happened like at the end of season 2. So I'm gonna put it in might rewatch. Okay, you know what? We're gonna change. We're gonna change it to would rewatch. We'll do... Okay. I guess you're just staying there then. Next up is Daredevil, specifically season 3. That's what I reacted to. I don't need to explain myself, but I will. Season 3 is so good from beginning to end. We had the top rated episodes of the series in that season, season 3 episode 4 and season 3 episode 13. That finale, oh my god. That 3-way fight between Dex and Fisk and Matt, and then the Matt yelling, saying, I beat you, and taking the mask off in front of Fisk, and then the Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige moment at the end, and then that Dex tease at the very, very end. Oh, sorry, I got very excited. I was like getting heated up. I think just each season of the show got better. Like season 1 was so good, and then the next season we had Elektra and we had Frank. Speaking of, I'm gonna be reacting to The Punisher very soon. Stay tuned. I'm so excited for that. But I just love the show. It's so good, and I hope that the new series will do this justice. Daredevil. Next up we have Supernatural season 5. No, I've still not finished season 5, but it is so good, and the season 5 finale is the top rated episode of the show. So I'm very excited to be watching that very soon, sometime this month. But this season feels like it's a lot more plot driven, focused on Lucifer and Michael, and oh my god. When I get like super excited, I can't figure out words. But speaking of Supernatural, I'm now going to be doing weekly reactions, which I am so excited for, so I can watch more of the show because I've been watching it for 2.5 years now, and I'm on season 5. If I was watching it on my own, not reacting to it, I would have finished 2.5 years ago. Probably 2 years ago, yeah. But I loved the show before I even started watching it, just based on clips, scenes, and edits that I saw on TikTok. I already knew that it was going to be a comfort show. Next up we have Outer Banks season 3. So I forgot that this came out not this year, in 2022. Fuck. I have no concept of time. In 2023, sometime in the spring or summer, I was thinking to myself, when's there gonna be a new season of Outer Banks? It's been a long time. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, right, they posted season 3 only a few months ago. They released it. They didn't post it, it's not YouTube. But I just thought that was funny. The same thing happened the other day with Young Royals. I was like, didn't season 2 just come out? And it had been well over a year. When is season 3 coming out? March! Hey, only a couple months away. I really don't remember too much from the 3rd season of Outer Banks. Like, I remember much more about the first 2 seasons. The only thing that's like really clear in my head is the ending where there was a time skip. What was it, like 18 months later? And I also remember John B and Sarah's dad dying. I'd put it in would rewatch. Next up is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Nine-Nine! This is like the second half of season 2 and the first few episodes of season 3. I absolutely love this show. It just makes me happy whenever I watch it. Every time I sit down to film the video, like as soon as I hit play, my spirits are already lifted. It is absolutely a comfort show. Next is Shadow and Bone. I am still not over the fact that it got canceled. Netflix, stop canceling good shows. I'm still upset about it, as you can tell. Okay, but really, there was no point because Shadow and Bone was in the top 10 for a long time. People loved it. Netflix, what the fuck? I love the show so much, and I wish we could have seen how it continued after the season 2 finale. I guess I need to finish reading the books. So far I've only read the first 2, but I really want to read Six of Crows. But I'm putting the show in I love. Next is Daisy Jones and the Six. If I wasn't doing reactions for Shadow and Bone this past spring, I would have done them for Daisy Jones and the Six. During the weeks leading up to the release, the show occupied my mind rent-free. I was so excited. I watched the trailer multiple times. I was listening to the music. I finally got around to reading the book because I had it for a while. And then every Thursday night, 7 p.m., I was sat ready to watch the newest episodes. I wish you guys could have seen my reaction to the finale. It was like I was at a concert, just singing along to Look at Us Now. Even after that final episode released, I was still thinking about the show, and I still do think about it. But there was a period in May where I listened to nothing besides the Aurora album. I specifically remember during my last week of school only listening to that album. So, I mean, I was listening to music constantly, so if that tells you anything. Oh my god. I just remembered that I did a whole assignment about the show and the book. Wait, I want to see if I can find it. Oh my god. I need a second. What is Daisy Jones and the Six? This story follows a fictional rock band discussing their rise to fame and their eventual abrupt end. This book takes the reader through many journeys, being a part of the most famous band, navigating relationships, living life in the 1970s. This novel was adapted into a TV series, and there's discussion about which version is better. I don't want to look at that anymore. There were so many differences, though, between the book and the show. Like, in the book, Daisy and Billy never kissed. The Karen and Graham thing, that was a secret, but not in the show. I mean, there was a lot that was different, but I still loved it. Next up is Good Omens. I think about the show at least once a week. The season 2 finale just like replays in my head, and then I get upset because we have to wait for season 3, but at least every day it's getting closer. Yeah, but earlier in the year I watched season 1 and I was immediately hooked. I watched I think the first 5 episodes in one sitting, and then season 2 was And then we have the Instagram account just reminding us constantly of the fact that we have to wait and, what they did to us. Whoever's running the Instagram needs to do the apology dance.
You were right. You were right. I was wrong. You were right.
Anyways, I love David Tennant. I love Michael Sheen. I love the show. Comfort show. Next up is New Girl. Who's that girl? It's Jess. I started the show one night because I was horribly sick and I wanted something that would cheer me up. And it did. I ended up watching the first 2 seasons and starting season 3 all in the course of about 5 days. And then I just stopped. But I do want to go back to it because I do want to finish the show. So hopefully this year I'll be able to get around to that. So I'm going to put it in would rewatch. Next up is Titans. This is like the second half of season 4. A lot of people dog on the show, but I love it. I have a connection with it, and I've been following along with it since season 2. I like that it's darker and more, I don't want to say realistic because it is a superhero show, but it is a lot more serious. I wish it didn't get canceled, but I'm good with how the last episode ended. But I'm gonna put this in I love. Next up is Peaky Blinders. So this for the first 3 seasons, and hopefully this year I'll get around to finishing the show. But I started this series back in May, which is also when my Cillian Murphy phase started. But I started the show and I found it intriguing. I watched the first couple seasons and then I stopped. Commitment issues. But a few weeks ago I watched season 3, and after the season 3 finale I was like, oh, I really want to watch the next season, but I wanted to finish another show first, which we'll get to later. I loved the soundtrack in the show. Am I saying that because I love the Arctic Monkeys? Yes. I mean, they're my top artist of the year. Makes sense. I'm gonna put Peaky Blinders in I love because I'm like super into it. And if I wasn't purposefully switching to continue another show, I would have started season 4. Next up is Secret Invasion. You can go check out my reaction. I think I said most of what I wanted to say there, but it started off really good and then the finale was just very disappointing and rushed, and it wasn't good. It was very disappointing considering in the first episode Maria Hill got killed off. Like, the stakes are high, and then just the finale. Also, remember when everyone, including me, thought that Daisy Johnson was going to be in the series? We're going to put Secret Invasion in eh. Normally, I like a good spy show, but these two, they didn't stick. Next is This Summer I Turned Pretty. I watched season 1 in 2022 when it came out, and I actually really enjoyed it. Although, there were some questionable things, like music choices and acting choices, but I digress. Season 2 just didn't get me intrigued. I should mention, I've only watched the first 3 episodes of season 2. I was sort of watching along as it was coming out and then just stopped. And I'm not really motivated to continue the season right now, especially knowing who Belly is currently with at the end of season 2. So maybe I'll wait for season 3 to come out and then catch up. I guess I'll put it in would rewatch though, because I will probably restart season 2 and then just watch it all the way through once I get to it. Next up is Sweet Magnolias. So I've been keeping up with the show since it came out in 2020 because I remember a few weeks before it came out, I saw a TikTok from Annalise Judge, who plays Annie in the show, and that just sort of stuck in my mind. So I've been watching it since. Like, every time the new season comes out, my mom and I watch it. I'm gonna put it in would rewatch. Because of the demographic of characters within the show, it has elements that appeal to both me and my mom. So that's why it's nice for us to watch. I'm excited to talk about this next one. Next up is White Collar. I have so many things to say about the show. I don't even know where to start. I guess I should start with the start though. I started it during the summer, watched like the first 3 episodes, and then I stopped. Okay, to be fair though, this was when I was doing my challenge of watching a movie every day, so I couldn't really keep up with TV shows that much. That's my excuse. But then I started it again back in mid-October and then continued for the next month and a half until I finished the show. I was immediately hooked from the beginning because just the concept was interesting. This con man escapes prison with only 4 months left on his sentence, and he ends up becoming a consultant and working with the FBI, White Collar Division. It's fascinating. I love crime stuff. That reminds me, I need to get back to Prison Break. I started it so many years ago, made it to season 3, never finished. Another goal for 2024, finish Prison Break. But back to White Collar, I think about the show on a daily basis. I love Neil Caffrey. He's a criminal, but he's just so charming and he's actually a good person. Neil and Peter's dynamic is something that's just so near and dear to my heart. And speaking of Peter, his relationship with Elizabeth, it's just so pure and nice and beautiful. They would always talk things out, and even though Elizabeth was always worried about Peter because of his job, she would still support him, and they went through a lot of obstacles throughout the show, but they managed to work their way out of it and stay together, and I love them. I love all the main characters on the show. I love Neil, Peter, Elizabeth, Diana, Clinton, Mozzie. One of my favorite characters, though, who was only around for half the show, less than half, Sarah Ellis, who's played by my birthday twin, Hilary Burton, who's married to Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I absolutely loved Sarah and her relationship with Neil, and I really wish that she stayed longer. I love this show, and if it isn't obvious, I'm putting it in my comfort show. Next up is The Crowded Room. I remember when that video was trending of Tom Holland running around and filming that scene for the first episode, and the internet went crazy. This is another show that I kind of just started on a whim. All the episodes were out and I had seen something about the last episode, so like I already knew what the big twist was, but that's kind of what made it intriguing and made me want to watch it. I thought it was very interesting, and I think Tom Holland did a fantastic job. I'm gonna put it in would rewatch. It did deal with a lot of serious and heartbreaking stuff that was difficult to stomach. Next up is Heartstopper, Season 2. After Season 1 came out in 2022, I have to remind myself not to say last year because it still does not feel like 2024. But after watching Season 1, I bought all the graphic novels and I was very excited to see the events of the 3rd and 4th volume in Season 2, especially the Paris trip. And it did not disappoint. This season touched on a lot more serious things compared to the first season, but it still was able to maintain that joy and charm that the first season had, which was nice to see. It's such a cute show. I love. Next up is Loki. Season 2 was magnificent. Like, the first season was amazing, but I think Season 2 just kind of went above and beyond, and I mean, I don't even know what to say. It rendered me speechless. Loki's development in this show was incroyable. It was so good. I loved our little ragtag team. I loved all the main characters. My one thing about the season is the scene with the episode with Miss Minutes and Victor Timely. That just is so uncomfortable. It still haunts me. But that final episode was perfection. It was a beautiful ending for both the show and for the character of Loki. We're gonna put it in comfort show. Season 2, yeah. Next up is Gen V. Since the trailer came out, the show had been on my watch list, but I didn't know if I was getting around to watching it before the end of the year. But I just finished the final episode of White Collar. I was happy, sad, and crying. Lots of tears. Then midnight hit, and I impulsively started the first episode. Then I kept watching, and next thing I know, I've just finished the final episode and it is 6 a.m. I enjoyed the show. I mean, I wouldn't have kept watching it and, staying up all night if I didn't. I think it's a very interesting way to expand on the boys' universe. We had some cameos: Ashley, Victoria, A-Train, Homelander, Butcher, Soldier Boy, knock knock, who's there, go fuck your face. I knew Homelander was going to be in the finale because I saw behind the scenes pictures, but I was aghast at what happened in that scene. I should have known, though, that they'd find some way to twist this. I was shocked, and I can't wait to see how this continues in season 4 of The Boys, whenever that comes out. Soon, hopefully. I mean, between the trailer and the end of the Gen V finale and what we saw with Newman. We can sort of guess what's going to happen, but also it's a crazy show, so can you really guess it? I'm going to put it in would rewatch. Next up is What If Season 2. I love this show because there are just so many possibilities and it's very creative. There were some episodes this season where I was just taken aback. I thought that what we saw in the earlier episodes of the season would connect in the finale like they did in season 1, but that didn't happen. I think there were a lot of good standout moments in season 2, but I think season 1 had more. But season 2 had some insane visuals and we got introduced to an original character, Kahori, who is insanely powerful. I'm gonna put What If in would rewatch. Hey guys, so this is the day after I filmed the ranking the shows I watched in 2023 on a tier list. I totally forgot Percy Jackson. I just saw my poster and I was like, oh, I didn't have the show on the list because I made the list before the show came out, so I didn't think about it. But I would rank, so far, 4 episodes in, Percy Jackson, or I guess 3 episodes last year, I would rank Percy Jackson and the Olympians on I love. I love it, especially after the 4th episode, which did come out this year, but technicalities. Now it's time for the final show going on the tier list. You know what, this tier doesn't even need to exist because nothing's going in here, so we're gonna delete that. Alright, I'm gonna set a timer to see how long it takes to get through all my notes. Finally, we have Smallville. There's so much I want to say about the show that I'm probably not even going to be able to get to. Even though I wrote down so much, there's definitely stuff that I'm gonna miss. I watched the first couple of seasons of Smallville on and off from about like late August to mid-October, and then I stopped. But then I went back to the show in early December, continuing with early season 3. It was December 9th and I decided that I would finish the show by the end of the year. That meant I had 22 days to watch 7 seasons. 8 seasons, technically. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. 8. I still don't know how I did it, because spoiler alert, I finished the show. I still can't believe it. You know, one of the main reasons I started watching Smallville was because of Zatanna, which is kind of funny because out of 217 episodes of the show, she's only in 2 of them. The night before I started Smallville, I had watched Superman Returns for the first time, and I think that was the final push I needed to finally start the show. Season 1 was fun to watch as we get introductions to these classic characters. We see a friendship start and develop between Clark Kent and Lex Luthor after Clark saves him from this impossible situation, and this starts Lex's obsession with Clark. You know, I have to say, I can understand why Lex went the way he did. He was curious about how he could have survived the car crashing into the river and, you know, why didn't he drown? He was curious, I get that. And as the seasons progressed, more of these impossible instances would happen and he would talk to Clark about it, but Clark would deflect or lie, and Lex knew that he was lying, but he couldn't do anything about it. Well, I mean, he could. Lex definitely could have minded his business more, but there were a lot of instances where something would go wrong and everyone would blame Lex, even though most of the time it wasn't his fault, and they would dig into his business, so I can sort of understand. You know, in the earlier seasons, I actually found myself liking Lex, like as a character, and then I had to keep reminding myself, hey, this is Lex Luthor, you know? I think I liked him as a character until the end of season 4. And then afterwards, I liked him as a villain, especially in the later seasons. And by that, I mean after the Lexana thing, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But speaking of season 4, that's when we get introduced to Lois Lane. I was counting down the episodes until we'd get introduced to her character, and I was not disappointed. I figured it would be a while till her and Clark became a thing, but I didn't realize like how much of a slow burn it would be. But I loved their bickering and banter and the fact that no one was able to challenge Clark the way that Lois could. Okay, yeah, but speaking of relationships, the Lex-Lana thing made me so uncomfortable. They started being a thing like a few episodes after Lana was like, I'm independent, I don't need anyone, which was a little ironic. But it was just so gross and weird because they've known each other since Lana was a freshman. Absolutely not. After everything that happened, I can understand why Lana was hurt and she was feeling vulnerable after Clark was consistently lying to her and keeping her at arm's length. But pursuing a relationship with Lex Luthor is not the solution. It was undoubtedly one of the worst things about the show. I feel conflicted when it comes to Lana. I liked her at first, but when she's used more as a love interest or a plot device instead of an actual character, it's hard to like her, especially after everything that happened with Lex. And then also when it comes to her relationship with Clark, like at first it was cute, but it dragged on and off for 8 fucking seasons. I was sick of it in season 3, so imagine how annoyed I was when I realized that it just would keep going, especially after the Lex-Lana thing. Okay, moving on. Season 1 was a good start and set up the foundation for the show. Season 2, we learn about Red Kryptonite and see how that affects Clark, and Red K makes an appearance every once in a while. Pete finally finds out Clark's secret. We get introduced to Virgil Swan, who's played by Christopher Reeve. I have not yet seen his Superman movies, but I do want to react to them probably sometime this year. In season 3, we have Cal, Clark's Red K alter ego, going on a rampage, and Jor-El grants Jonathan temporary powers in order to bring Clark back home, and that would have fatal consequences, but we're not there yet. In this season, Clark gets super hearing, we meet Perry White, and Lex supposedly has a psychotic breakdown. During that episode, I genuinely did not know what to think. At first, I was like, oh yeah, someone's trying to kill him. But then after the Julian thing, I was like, I don't know anymore. But I felt really bad for him during this time because he was just being manipulated by Lionel. But Lex finds out Clark's secret, but ends up getting his memory erased from the last 7 weeks. And I love the scene at the end of the episode where Lionel's watching the security footage and sees Lex telling Clark, I know your secret, but Lex doesn't know the secret anymore because Lionel erased his memory. The season 3 finale was absolutely crazy, but then season 4, Lois Lane, baby. We get introduced to Jason Teague, who is played by none other than Jensen Ackles. You know, at first the Lana Isabel stuff was interesting, but then it dragged on and on and on. Kind of made the season hard to watch. But there are some highlights from the season besides Lois Lane. You know, we got introduced to Bart Allen, Clark joined the football team, Crypto, the dog, the Onyx episode where we got the iconic line,
I am the villain of the story.
I love Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor. He did such an amazing job. In this season, Chloe learns about Clark's powers, and as soon as she knows, I started liking her. Like, she was fine before, but I feel like once she knew, she just got better. At the end of season 4, the beginning of season 5, we get the Fortress of Solitude. I was so excited. Season 5 had a lot of really great moments. We got introduced to Arthur Curry, aka Aquaman. We had the Lexmas episode. This season also has the top-rated episode of the show, which is also the 100th episode. Season 5, episode 12, Reckoning. Clark tells Lana his secret, Jonathan wins the election, everything's all good. Until Lana dies. Clark begs Jor-El to go back in time so he can change the outcome, but in changing the past, Jonathan dies after Lionel reveals that he knows Clark's secret. It was absolutely heartbreaking, but it had to happen eventually. Since the pilot episode, I was always on edge. Whenever something insane happened to Jonathan, I was like, oh my god, this is it, this is when he dies. In the season 5 finale, even though Clark and Lex are no longer friends, Clark still tries to save him, but instead opens a portal that allows Zod to inhabit Lex's body, and also ends up sending Clark to the Phantom Zone. So in the season 6 premiere, we get to see what the Phantom Zone looks like and how Clark traverses that having no powers. Chloe has powers, which I totally forgot about until I was writing down notes. It just was erased from my mind. But to be fair, I did consume 8 seasons of a show in 3 weeks. But also, Lana and Lex get married, Lana finds out Clark's secret. We get introduced to some key characters this season: Jimmy Olsen, Martian Manhunter, and one of my favorite characters of the show, Oliver Queen. I was very excited to see Justin Hartley's portrayal of Green Arrow because prior to the show, I'd only seen Stephen Amell's Green Arrow, and they are very different, but I love both of them. In season 7, we get introduced to Kara Zor-El, aka Supergirl, and also Black Canary. Also, about halfway in the season, we get to see Pete Ross one last time, but I wish that they did it better. Pete returns to Smallville and ends up getting powers due to kryptonite gum, and immediately starts showing off his powers and trying to get popular because of it, and it just felt like it was messing up his character, especially after everything that happened with Clark. It just felt weird. This season gave us insight as to why Lionel Luthor was in Smallville on the day of the meteor shower when Kal-El came to Earth. We learn about this group, Veritas, that connects Lionel Luthor, Virgil Swan, the Teagues, and the Queens. This whole storyline felt very out of place, and we barely got to see any of our superheroes like Ollie and Cyborg, Aquaman, Bart. Lana and Clark started a relationship again. Even though in season 5 or 6, Lana was like, this is it, we're done, never again. I'd have to say the highlight of the season is Lex as he transforms into a full villain. He kills Lionel, he finds out Clark's secret as they have that confrontation in the Fortress of Solitude, and then after the fortress collapsed, everyone thinks that Lex and Clark are dead, and that leads us into season 8. We get introduced to a lot of new characters this season, but we'll start off with Tess Mercer. I did not think I'd like her character because she was Lex's protege. I thought that she would turn out to be main antagonist, but I was wrong. As the series progressed and we saw her more and more, she became one of my favorite characters. And as we learned about her story in season 10, I was shocked, but also it made sense that Tess Mercer was Lena Luthor. I didn't think we'd get Lena Luthor in the series, so I was happy that it was Tess. But we also get introduced to Davis, Plastique, some members of the Legion, including Dez from Austin and Ally, Emil Hamilton, who is also one of my favorite characters, even though he's not around as much as I would have liked him to be. We also got introduced to Zatanna and Jimmy's brother, James Olsen. When Jimmy died in the season 8 finale, I was like, what are they gonna do? Because Jimmy's supposed to be Superman's best friend and like the photographer. But then in the future they showed Jimmy's brother James being Jimmy Olsen, and that being the Jimmy Olsen that is Superman's best friend. Season 8 had me conflicted. I loved the first episode, and I loved that Justin Hartley was now a main character, so we'd be seeing Oliver Queen more. And we got to see like some flashbacks of his time on the island where he met Tess. Season 8, episode 5 was insane, but they just brushed off that love confession because she slipped the censor off, so that's why it said it was true when it wasn't. And then just a few episodes later, when Clark and Lois were having a moment, Lana showed up. And then Lois left until Lana left. It felt very forced to bring Lana back only for a few episodes and then write her off because she was physically unable to be near Clark because of the amount of kryptonite she absorbed. Those episodes were very difficult to get through. At this point, I was just annoyed with Lana. Like, I liked her at first. Like, during that arc where she met a real dad and then they just never talked about that again. And another thing that annoyed me this season was the whole Chloe Davis thing. Anyways, Clark became the Blur, or the Red Blue Blur, which, say that 5 times fast. Red Blue Blur, blah, blah, blah. And Oliver kills Lex, which... Then we get into season 9, Clark and Lois start a relationship, but Lois still doesn't know Clark's secrets. This season gave us a multitude of characters: Roulette, Metallo, Mia Durden, Cat Grant, the Dark Archer, Amanda Waller, the JSA, Maxwell Lord, and the younger version of Zod, who is the main antagonist of the season. I had to read my notes, there was no way I could have memorized that. Clark begins to wear a uniform and burns his symbol, the House of L, throughout the city as he makes all these saves to use it as a symbol of hope. Now, the final season, there are even more characters introduced. Darkseid, Rick Flag, Deadshot, Desaad, Granny Goodness, Brainiac 5, Mara, Slade Wilson, Ultraman, Connor Kent, Ted Cord, Jaime Reyes, Booster Gold, Captain Cold, and even more. In the season 9 finale, Lois figured out Clark's secret but decided to keep it to herself, as Clark would tell her once he thought it was the right time. We got Homecoming, a nostalgic episode stemming from their high school reunion, and at the end, while Lois and Clark are having their dance, Clark starts to fly. We get to see the new and improved Brainiac. Clark finally tells Lois the secret. Tess learns about her past and her true name. We see Slade Wilson, Gerard, for my Teen Wolf fans out there. Anyways, he is hell-bent on capturing superheroes and vigilantes, and every time I see him, I just want to punch his face. We get the Luthor episode where Clark ends up transported to a parallel universe where he's now Clark Luthor and he's a murderer, and his alternate self from that universe takes his place in his universe, and that character just made me so uncomfortable. Anyways, at the end of the episode, Clark Kent makes his way back home, but unknowingly takes Lionel Luthor from that universe to his world. A few episodes after that is probably one of my favorite episodes of the series because it is just so much fun. Season 10, episode 15, Fortune. Zatanna sends a magically spiked bottle of champagne for Clark and Lois's engagement, and no one remembers anything when they wake up. It is just chaos, and I love it. A couple episodes later, we get Clark Luthor again. Really, one episode with him wasn't enough. But Clark Kent gets to have a talk with Jonathan of the parallel universe, and that was a sweet moment. There was the Booster Gold episode, which had Jaime Reyes as the Blue Beetle. I had no idea that there was a live action version of Blue Beetle before the movie. I only thought it was animated, so I was very excited to see Jaime Reyes. The following episode is directed by Justin Hartley. Oliver and Clark are taken to the Phantom Zone where Zod is there and forces them to fight to the death. I can't believe that Clark didn't know that Oliver had the Omega symbol on his head until Chloe stopped Oliver from taking away Clark's powers. It would have been crazy if Clark was using his X-ray vision for something and then turns and looks at Oliver and sees the Omega symbol. I would have loved to see that. But I think it made it more epic, kind of interrupting their wedding, and they wouldn't get married for another 7 years. But yeah, in the 2-part finale, Lois and Clark, they have their wedding, but it's interrupted by Darkseid and Oliver trying to take Clark's powers, but it's not his fault. Lionel kidnaps Tess and wants to use her heart to revive Lex. Tess is able to escape, but Darkseid ends up reviving Lex. So we finally get to see Michael Rosenbaum return as the character once again. Clark and Lex have their final confrontation in the Luthor mansion. Lex kills Tess. I'm still so upset about that. Why? But Clark finally embraces his destiny and learns how to fly. Then 7 years later, we see Chloe telling the story of Superman to her son, Lois telling Jimmy's brother, Jimmy, that he has some big shoes to fill. On a TV broadcast, we see that Lex Luthor is now the president of the United States, which was hinted at in the earlier seasons and also talked about in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. But in the final scene, we see Clark go up to the roof, reveal that he has the Superman suit under his shirt, and goes to save the day. It's been 45 minutes of me talking about the show. I pretty much just recapped the entire show, but I thought that was the best way for me to be able to hit key points and kind of be more organized with that. I immediately connected with the series, and even though there are a lot of things I dislike about the show, whether it comes to characters, relationships, or plot lines, I loved it, and I would say that it's a comfort show. Well, let's see if I want to do some rearranging. Okay, you know what? For The Summer I Turned Pretty, since I'm talking about what I watched last year, that was only 3 episodes. I'm gonna put in I will rewatch, but I'm not really motivated to. I think within each tier, there's not really a specific ranking. It's just however I placed it, even though I did just move Supernatural all the way up there. Alright, so this is my ranking for the shows I watched in 2023. I hope to watch a lot more shows this year. There are so many on my list, but I should probably continue the ones I've already started. That's going to be it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you get notified whenever I post a new video. I have a lot of content coming up this year, so stay tuned. I will see you guys next time. Bye!